While I understand Sudecon wipes are the best choice for eye cleansing, it's restricted purchase. I've heard sterile water mixed with no tears baby shampoo is another acceptable solution to tear gas or pepper spray. Is this true? If so, do you pre-make yours? I'm sorry, Chris, that I didn't get a chance to respond to you this morning when I said I would. It's now 9 o'clock at night and I'm finally getting around to it. I had a community organizing meeting this morning and this afternoon, and then I spent some time at the coffee shop with a girlfriend. She was working on sewing and I was working on knitting, and we just needed a little time off our phones and away from the horrors of the world, and just a chance to decompress and chat for a little bit. So that's what I was doing. And so now I'm finally at 9 o'clock at night getting around to answering your question. Thank you for your patience. Now let's talk about Sudecon wipes first. Okay, I do want to say here, I'm obviously not a medical professional, so please don't take anything I'm saying as medical advice at all. When we're talking about being exposed to tear gas or pepper spray, tear gas in particular, and especially there's like a mix of different chemical irritants, chemical agents that ICE is using across the country. They've been using a number of them, including green gas in Portland, for over a year. If you're exposed to that shit, you want to talk to your healthcare professional, especially if you are somebody who's protesting on a regular basis and you're constantly being dosed with what essentially are chemical weapons. Just a reminder that, like, the Geneva Convention prohibits the use of a number of the chemical irritants that ICE is using on American civilians on a regular basis, including children. It's worth noting that next door to the ICE facility in Portland was a school. They had to move to a different location because their playground was so contaminated with tear gas residue and pepper balls. There are children who live in the apartment complexes across the street from the ICE facility in Portland. Those children have been exposed to months and months and months of chemical warfare. We saw in Minnesota that they were using tear gas outside of a preschool. Multiple instances of children as young as 6 months old being tear gassed by federal agents in Minnesota. First off, like, please don't let this be normalized. This is not normal. It's not normal for unarmed civilians to be bombarded with chemical agents from lawless, out of control paramilitary enforcers who work for the president. It's not normal. It's good for us to remind ourselves it's becoming commonplace, but it's not normal, and we should not accept it. Not accept it now in the moment, and definitely not accept it as the future of this country. Okay, on to your question about Sudecon wipes. Sorry, but I had to put all of the rest of that in there. Sudecon wipes are kind of the standard. They look a little bit like baby wipes that are meant to help decontaminate your eyes after you've been exposed to tear gas. You're supposed to wipe from the inside to the outside, right? And it helps, I think, to have people tip their heads back, and you wipe from the inside to the out. You're constantly moving the residue away from the eyes and toward the outside. Sudecon wipes work well. There's two downsides. One is the expense, and two is that the company who makes them also makes the chemical agents that ICE is using against us. So Fox Labs developed Sudecon, but in 2022, Fox Labs was sold to this company called Byrna, Byrna, and they sell what they call state-of-the-art CO2-powered launchers designed to provide a less lethal alternative to firearms. They are marketed to consumers, private security, and law enforcement. So protesters don't like to buy Sudecon because it's sort of like shopping from Amazon. You're giving your pennies to somebody who is actively contributing, profiting off of the harm that is being done against us in our communities, right? So I understand. I would not judge a medic or a protester who used Sudecon wipes. Like, I totally understand why that's a compromise. We always look at the spectrum of good, better, best. Best is not always accessible, right? We have to function in a system that we didn't make. We didn't make tear gas. We didn't make less lethals, but we live in a society where they exist, and we don't control the fact that the people who make the remedy to those also make the weapons themselves. I'm seeing an awful lot of people who are making their own homemade versions of Sudecon wipes. I'm not going to advise people on whether or not they should do that because, I think it's risky when you're fucking around with your eyes. Shared a video a couple of days ago from Dr. Glaucoma Flecken, who is an ophthalmologist, and he talked about how you can use a little bit of baby shampoo mixed into a jug of water, and that is really good for a flush. And I said, as somebody who has an autoimmune disease, ocular rosacea, I have to wash my eyelids with baby shampoo on a regular basis, and it doesn't hurt your eyes. It's totally fine, and it's really good at helping break up. Well, for somebody with ocular rosacea, it would be like oil basically, but if you're talking tear gas, right, like the residue, right, helps break it up and move it off. Plain water also works. I know that the paramedic who is hosting the training that I did yesterday for protest medics was talking about how plain water can be really irritating to the eyes, right? Think about when you're a kid and you're like swimming in the pond, and that saline is much more soothing, but your average person is not going to have a big jug of saline with them. It is good to carry 2 bottles of water, and if you want to have one of those mixed with a little baby shampoo, that's fine. I know ophthalmologists really recommend against using other things in your eyes, especially milk or milk of magnesia, things that are not formed. Don't fuck around with your eyes, y'all, right? And in general, I think try and have those goggles and make sure you plug up the holes and have them pulled real tight, right? We want to protect our eyes as much as possible. But I've seen people making homemade wipes. Like I made homemade baby wipes when my kids were little, and it was sort of the same thing, like warm water and a little squirt of baby shampoo. And then you would use like paper towels, or you would use soft flannel, pieces of flannel if you were washing them, if you were doing cloth diapers. And I think I've seen people making a similar version of homemade eye wipes. I don't want to speculate as to whether or not those are good to be using. And I do understand, again, spectrum, good, better, best. People are making compromises. People are taking risks and doing what they feel is best in the moment. And I don't want to judge other protesters or protest medics for what they're using in order to take care of people who are being attacked by federal agents. I will say you're supposed to flush your eyes for 10 to 15 minutes, right? Anybody who took, college chemistry, think about what the eye wash station is like. It's just like a torrent in your eyeballs, and you're supposed to stand there and just keep your eyes under that stream for 15 minutes. Most people in the middle of a protest don't have a jug of water big enough to be flushing for a full 15 minutes. So I think it's good to look at what the best practice is. What do medical professionals recommend when you're in these compromised situations and you don't always have access to the very best practice? Another thing at the protest medic training that the trainer talked about was using syringes filled with sterile saline, and that those are really good for not using up as much saline and really getting targeted, right? All of the saline is going right where you want. You're having that narrow stream flushing folks' eyes, and that has been really good and effective at pushing all of that tear gas residue out. That then requires you to get access to sterile syringes, and then sterile saline you can get from medical supply stores. That's another cost, right? So thinking about if we're engaging in these protests, how is it that we can help support protest medics? They're doing a really, really crucial job. I've seen paramedics, doctors, nurses who are all willing to volunteer in this role, expose themselves to risk. There's also street medics who've been doing this for a really, really long time, and they are incurring an awful lot of expense. So in our community organizing, we want to be aware, like you may not be somebody who is protesting down at ICE or exposing yourself to these kinds of situations, but you want to know, how can you support the folks who are doing that work? If it's not for you, how can you be a support to them? I think looking at what we can do to help supply our medics with necessary medical equipment is a really good first start. Whether that is buying a Stop the Bleed kit, those are like $80, whether it is purchasing 4x4s for them, whether it's purchasing saline, tourniquets, what oh God, just is so unreal that we're having to talk about this. Unarmed American citizens protesting, engaging in their protected constitutional right, and we're having to talk about tourniquets and Stop the Bleed kits. But this is where we're at. So anyway, I really encourage your group, if you want to help people who are protesting on the front lines, think about how you can support the medics. Think about how, if you have the skills, you could volunteer as a medic, or how you can help by purchasing medical supplies. We aren't all called to be on the front line. Not everybody is in a position where their risk tolerance, their risk threshold is going to allow them to be standing in tear gas or getting beaten by ICE chuddies or getting arrested. But we all can do our part. We all have different roles to fill in this movement. And we also want to make sure we're doing our best to keep each other safe and to care for each other. We're building solidarity. We're using different tactics. We're not all in the same places, but we're swimming in the same direction. We're trying to move this country in the same direction together. So yeah, thank you for this question about Sudecon, and thanks for letting me yap about it for a little bit. I would love to know from folks who are doing this kind of work, maybe protest medics, what you have found works best and how people can best help you do your job.